day to you, my friend, and welcome back to the Higher Grounds podcast. Thank you for joining us on this fine day. I hope the Lord's blessing your life and things are going well with you during this holiday season. And from us to you, we do wish you the happiest of holidays, a great Merry Christmas. Thanksgiving has just passed us, and we had such a great time with our church and with our family in regard to the Thanksgiving holiday season. But now here we are at the most wonderful time of the year, Christmas time. Some people like it, some people don't, but we're going to be celebrating the Lord's birth and having a good time here with our local church, and hope that you do the same today. I've got Brother Billy Carter with me. Brother Billy is a member of the Galilee Baptist Church, church planter out of Galilee Baptist Church, and back here working with us for a while until he gets his next duty assignment from the Lord. And we're glad to have you on, Brother Billy. How you doing?
It's good to be here. Doing fine, preacher.
Great.
It's an honor to be back in the studio, so to speak, with you.
Well, you are. You are back in the studio, and we're glad that you came. And glad to have you back at the house for a while.
Yes.
We're getting to enjoy fellowship and enjoy you and your wife being here with us. It's a blessing, isn't it?
Blast from the past.
You know, we first met 22 years ago.
Yeah.
All our kids were just little bitty knotheads, and now they're all up and grown and gone, married, and own kids, and so it's life does have a way of changing quickly, doesn't it?
Very rapidly.
I mean,
yes, sir. It does.
It'll switch up on you in a hurry.
Right now, that's for sure.
Are you
really
enjoying this season of life though with your wife? And of course, that's a bad question. You know, well, what are you going to say? No.
Yes, uniquely strange. Brianna got married this year, so
that's
it
kind of
changed everything.
The whole dynamic changes when all the kids are gone, doesn't it?
Yeah, you ain't got no one siding with you, whether or not you said it right. Or
and if anything goes wrong, you can't blame anybody.
Right.
Yeah, it's either you or her, and it's always me.
It's different with just two of you in the house. It really is. It makes it it's fun, but it's definitely different. You know, the last time that we were by ourselves, things wasn't all that roses is more like guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
You know, before we got saved, we was, all by ourselves. But then after Tanya got saved and then I got saved, we had kids. So
right.
Everything's different now.
Well, that's great though.
Just men and her.
That's
me
right.
Me and her.
That's right. Well, but it's kind of exciting waiting on your next duty assignment and just kind of sitting back, waiting on God to give the point and go, and in the meantime, serving Him here. It's really is a joy to have y'all back.
Yes.
And we didn't get to see enough of one another when you were traipsing around the world. So
on deputation when you
on deputation. Hey, speaking of which, great segue. Today, Brother Billy and I want to talk to young church planters, and we want to talk to young men and young families that are. You may not be so young, but you're going out for the first time, and you're trying to generate support from local churches to help you on the field of service. We call this deputation. I'm not sure where all of the etymology of the word comes from or any of that, but we do know that it is a process by which young families are seeking to get financial support and prayer support from individual churches so that they can have funds enough to get to the field and do a work for the Lord. And oftentimes, in the rearing of those funds, there's a lot of things that, if you've never been on deputation, that you don't understand, and particularly if you're a pastor who's not been involved in the missions process, you don't understand, because you're not just having to raise funds for you and your family individually, you're also having to raise funds for the work itself, the building, because as you're getting it started, you're having to foot that bill, correct?
That is exactly
so
right.
It's there's a lot to be considered in regard to that. There are missions boards and missions agencies that help in schooling you in regard to what that actually means. a lot of times missionaries that are simply through the local church, which is what I prefer, to be honest with you, a lot of times they don't understand completely all of that process. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to take this opportunity to deal with that subject. Now, you surrendered to be a church planter back in about 2000.
That's correct.
Okay. So I came in 2001, and you had just begun, you had not long just begun your deputation trek. And
that's right.
How many years did you stay out raising funds?
A year and 10 months.
Okay, which was, at that time, there were people, the average at that time was like 4 years. And I knew of some, I actually had known of one person that had been out there about 10 years trying to raise funds. And they went to the field and were there for a year, and it was over with. So there are some things in this process that are broken, and then there are some people involved in this process who don't need to be there. I think we would both agree with that.
I do agree.
Yeah,
I really do.
So give me, knowing your personality, this had to be tough for you.
Oh, yes. Yes, because you're really getting on the phone asking someone for something. And to always provide for yourself, now you're leaning on someone else. It does make it difficult because you're not begging, but yet you're asking.
Yeah.
And it feels
you're not
as though
begging,
it's the
but
same.
you're begging, right?
Exactly.
Right.
You're exactly right. So it is. It's very uncomfortable.
We had a missionary that came by here several years ago, and he had just such a comedic type personality. He wasn't trying to be. He was just funny. And he got in the pulpit. He said, all right. He said, let's get the preliminaries out of the way. He said, let me tell you why I'm here. I am here to get your money. That's why I'm here.
That's
and believe it or not, that got the elephant out of the room, and people were able to, to connect with him.
Bust the ice.
Right.
Yes.
But that's really what you're doing when you're calling pastors and trying to arrange meetings. So kind of walk me through your experience with that.
Well, I believe with my heart that whenever the Lord has burdened you to go to a place, that there's no dragging your feet. And if there's anything that has encouraged me, it was that Brother Barker had made a statement, stay on the phone, stay on the road, and you'll get there. And so that's exactly what I did personally, and that was to book as many meetings as I could in a calendar month.
And what was your average?
I would be in a church service every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday, and then I would schedule around if they had a missions conference, then I would try to smash that into either a Tuesday or a Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday.
Now, at first, of course, you had done very well for yourself working in industrial maintenance in different plants. I mean, Billy's there's nothing he can't do. And so you'd done very well for yourself. Now you're having to basically be full-time on the road without a guaranteed paycheck.
Right.
Was that an apprehension for you, knowing I'll say it, the self-made type man that you were? Was that a difficulty for you?
Very much so, but the Lord, He provided, and He broke me down in different stages.
Okay.
What I mean by that is I was working at a job whenever I was saved, when I got saved, and then whenever that changed because of working on Sundays, that was a breakdown. Then I began to work at another facility, and so that was 5 days a week. So what I mean by the breakdown is that there was a time that I was on deputation and working, but then the company started allowing me to have time off to go on deputation. And so it was a weaning away.
Yeah, so you didn't go cold
stop.
turkey,
No,
so to speak.
Right.
Okay.
But then there was that time that even that company let me go, but that was just the way the Lord allowed that to happen in my life.
It was in perfect timing, though.
Yes.
And it allowed you to see God meet
Providing.
and supply. And
Providing.
provide. Okay.
It was 100% faith because there was not enough of money for us to go full-time on deputation on a piece of paper.
Yeah, you still had a mortgage on a house you were paying for.
Absolutely.
You had vehicles and things of that, just normal living expenses that you had to take care of. But if a church is going to take care of a missionary that, let's say, they drop by on a Sunday morning, Sunday night, or Wednesday night, whatever the case is, how should that church take care of that man and his family as they come? Now, I'm sure there's some considerations that need to be taken into consideration. For instance, if he's just getting started, or if he's been out there 2 or 3 years and he has 80% of his support, and his support it's 80% of, let's say, $10,000. I mean, he's doing okay for himself at the moment. So, what would you say? What would you say is a perfect way of taking care of a missionary that comes by on, let's say, a Wednesday night to present his work?
That is a loaded question.
Okay, in what way is it loaded?
The reason that it's loaded is because if a missionary is just starting on deputation, and you give him a love offering of $100, well, how far did he travel? And that's all the money that he has, and that's not going to be sufficient for him. If he had been on the deputation and he's at 50%, that could get him to the next place. What I did, preacher, is if it exceeded a certain amount of money and I was just starting on deputation, then I would put some of that money back. And so far as expense, because there were times that it was just enough of money to get to one church, to the next church, and living off of Wendy's 99-cent menu. So it is a very big struggle trying to get started whenever there's no cushion. Whenever you get about 50%, what I did is we would put, if you gave me $500, let's say, as a number, and it took me $200, then $300 of that would go into the building fund, but a separate account. So that when we got to the field, there would be something there to get books, songbooks, literature, whatever you would need to start the mission. So that's what we did. It wasn't that a church can give you too much money as long as you got your mind set for getting the ministry started. Allocating
the monies that come in for specific purposes, which means budgeting and money management, which some people have no idea about. And most of those folks who have no idea about budgeting and money management won't make it on the field anyway.
They won't, because your income or your support fluctuates. It's never a consistency.
What would be, let's say you had what was your biggest drop from 1 month to the next month? What was your biggest drop in a month's time?
Gracious. I've seen as big as $800 to where, how are we going to get through this next month? And then the following month, it would be gain the $800, but you never did recoup from that $400 lost or whatever. So it was up and down. There's no steady income when it comes to that. Just simply because of what churches go through. Maybe a pastor.
So when a missionary comes to your church to present his work, there's some things that need to be taken into consideration. Number one, if they're just dropping in and they've not come by way of an invitation, and you don't know the individual, I don't think that you have any obligation financially to do anything for them. But out of the goodness and kindness of your heart, God's not going to punish you for giving to them. However, if it's someone that you've agreed for them to come, some things need to be taken into consideration. Number one, you need to take their fuel into consideration. Where did they come from? How long did it take them to get there? And where are they going once they leave your place? Fuel is a consideration. Number two, let's consider this. Where are they going to stay this evening? You need to make sure as a church that you're doing what you can to make sure, if you're going to invite them to come, wouldn't you agree? They need a place to stay, to freshen up with their family. And I've seen churches have a missionary in, or a preacher for that matter, for the whole day, and they come in on Saturday night, except for Sunday. They come in on a Saturday night, and so they only pay for a Saturday night for a motel, not realizing that that man and his wife are going to be with them on Sunday evening as well. They've got to have somewhere to go that evening.
Right.
And so you've got to take care of 2 days to make sure that they are comfortably taken care of. And if you're unwilling to do that, don't have them come. All right. You got to consider that. And then you got to consider feeding these individuals in some way, either giving them money to go out and eat. Mm-hmm. And then you have to consider the fourth or final thing, which is these individuals have living expenses that they're going to be, they're going to have to take care of. We have had missionaries that, and I won't give you figures, but we have given, missionaries, nearly a week's pay, for if they'd have been on a job, and nearly a week's pay for being here a day, and then some, a few $100 or $100, $150, or not $100, but $150, $75, $200, $300, whatever it was, to get them on down the road. But they were in a financial position of being okay. Mm-hmm. All right, so when you were calling these guys, what was one of your biggest frustrations? Calling preachers. I remember Billy called me one day, and he was mad as a hornet, and he was upset. And I was laughing about it a little bit, to be honest with you. But he had broken a telephone. And so, by accident, of course. But what were some of your biggest frustrations in the calling process of Deputation?
Well, back in those days, we had the calling card. So there was all of the numbers that you'd had to punch in and then call the number. So once that was out of the way, the inconsistency of a pastor, can you call me back 3 weeks from now? You call back 3 weeks from now. I don't remember talking to you, or making a promise that we're having a missions conference call to verify, your room, and they don't have your room. Just the inconsistency, that would be a negative side of that. Excuse me. But for the most part, calling a preacher and setting an appointment to get beyond that barrier of pride and asking and inviting yourself, for them to make a commitment, or Brother Carter, I'd like for you to come by the church, give me a call sometime. And you call, they don't remember. So there's a lot of logistics that go inside of there.
Did you ever feel like that you were out and out lied to?
That was the reason for the phone to
to become damaged.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's the lying. It's call this day, you call this day. Well, how about calling him 3 more weeks? Okay, we're going to have a missionary come by, double book. Will you call me? And then all the while knowing they wasn't even going to be able to support you when you got there. That would be.
Well, this was before texting and email and all that.
Yes.
Would that have corrected some of that problem now?
Oh, yes. I would believe, because then you have a commitment, or you get to send the text back to the preacher. We're right here is where we had you scheduled. Right. Maybe I wrote it down wrong, but then they get to see it.
I knew text. Back in the days before the texting business, I knew of a man that would, if you called him and you booked him, or he called and you booked him, he would immediately pop you a letter in the mail of confirmation that day.
That was called a deputation organizer, that's what it is, deputation organizer.
Okay.
And it was a computer program that an individual came up with, and so you can put all the information in there, what the preacher wanted you to do, what his name was, where the address is, all of those, and then it sent a confirmation letter
to the
it automatically
I see.
Produced that, and then once you went, it also gave a thank you card as well.
But up to now, you've got, I can send you an email, and I know people don't like email. I hate email, and then but I see all my texts. Mm-hmm. You can text them, make the confirmation, and then have a record of a conversation and call. Yes. I think it's probably easier now in that respect than it was during those 22 years ago or whatever. Right. So now you're moving out on the road. What is it like? What was the longest car trip you took?
Alabama. Alabama would have been the
8,
longest.
9, 10 hours?
Yes, something in that neighborhood. Yes.
So where did most of your support come from? State?
North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee.
North,
A little
South,
bit of
and
Georgia.
Tennessee.
Yeah, northern part of Georgia.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you travel. What was it like with two little kids traveling 10 hours?
It was, they made it fun because of working and getting off the job and then going on deputation or going on a road trip, what we would call it. They couldn't ask for a better time for the family because they would sing together or they were always busy. But I was such a sergeant that I really didn't give them too much of a break because I wanted to get to point A to point B as soon as I can.
Yeah,
and that
you sound like Larry Wells.
That was just a downside. That is a negative. Don't do that.
All right, so that brings us into the next statement, the question I want to ask. So, how can a man on deputation? How can he keep just the joy of a happy home while you're in that whirlwind of, 15, 18, 24 months of this? How can you keep the joy in your home and family?
Well,
Particularly traveling as a way of getting under everybody's nerves.
Yes. Do what the family wants to do and keep it balanced. You can't stop at every single planetarium. You can't stop at all of the amusements.
Right.
But at the same time,
but you need to
don't overlook that because think about it. If you're on deputation for 4 years, I don't understand that, but if that happens, that's 4 years away from family, friends, recreation, if it's done right.
Right.
So you're really isolating your family from communicating with anyone. And I find that even as I was a pastor listening to some of the missionaries, the wives would even stay home because they had been on such a stretch of deputation. Time has really changed from when we were on deputation to what we're enduring, what we endured years ago. What I mean by that, preacher, is that it used to be that you would go to a church and they would provide a motel room. But now you got churches that have missions chambers or prophets chambers, and missionaries go there and then use that as a hub to go to different places. So it's really changed. All of that's really changed. You can make it a home if you want to in those in that atmosphere. Excuse me, but the way to make it user friendly, to keep peace in the home, is just be aware of what they need, and don't overlook them by looking at point A to point B.
So let's talk about this. I think this is important. Let's talk about the behavior of your children and how important that is to you getting support from a local church.
We actually had a preacher that told us when we first started deputation, your children will either make or break you. And then as I started paying attention to other missionaries, I would concur. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I don't understand that a child can be cooped up in a car for 4 hours.
Yeah,
I understand that. And then get out and then walk into a church and they be on the billboard. They be on the stage to see how they're going to act. There's a balance with that as well. They really are. But, you got a kid that's crawling up under the pew. He did that before they got there. There's no controlling your child.
Right.
You got a mother that takes the child out during the whole session. There's issues there.
Right.
She's either bored with you or you ain't got no touch on you.
Right.
Something's going on somewhere. I say that because for the most part, you have a missionary that has a burden that's going to a place, and he's going to have to win their hearts.
Right.
If he can't win their own children's heart or wife's heart, then he's going to come back off of the field, and it's been more of a joyride of preaching than it is presenting a burden.
Do you remember how many churches you were in?
214.
All right, 214 churches. How many of those churches did you preach in?
210.
Probably 210 churches out of the 214 you preached in. I think for some of you, you young men, let me give this to you. And if you're a pastor and you have some young missionaries out of your church, let me give this to you. The wife and the children of that missionary are going to have to listen to their dad preach 3 times, 4 times a week for 2, 3, 4 years, okay? So if all they ever hear is the same old warmed-up message over and over and over and over again, how are they going to spiritually grow? And so there has to be something fresh. If you're going to be the primary preacher, there's got to be something fresh that you're feeding your own family, or your own family is going to spiritually starve to death. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would agree. In our case, we would throw on CDs. We would listen to preaching, but also we spent a lot of time together as a family, devotions or not having church in the car, but at the same time, it was really oriented around spiritual things.
That's very good.
So there again, there's a balance with that, because they are missionaries that work 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, and then jump in the car and travel. And it really minimizes their opportunity of getting in and studying.
Sure.
But there's a balance there. You're exactly right. It shouldn't be a carbon copy. Same attitude.
Right.
Same smile. Same wording. Same jokes. And you're killing it. I believe that the Bible is alive, and you can preach it one way at your home church, and then you go preach it the same message somewhere else. Yeah. But then
it's different.
It entirely different.
Right.
But it is the carbon copy, that cookie cutting that is dead.
I have known through the years missionaries that were tremendous preachers, but I would not and couldn't support them because of their family.
Oh, yes.
I remember one that came by years ago, best preaching missionary I ever heard. Then their vehicle broke down. They had to stay with us for about 3 days. And when I saw the way the wife treated the husband and treated the children and how the whole family unit was, when they pulled away after their car got fixed, I told my wife, we'll never support them.
Yes.
And it wasn't long before their whole family busted up. Yes. And so you really are in a goldfish bowl. People are watching you, and you're asking them to invest in you. So they have a right to look at you if you're asking them to invest in your life. And so this is a big deal. I mean, it's not a small thing. It's a big deal. Are there any parting pieces of advice you would give to these young men?
Stay faithful with calling and keeping your calendars full. And Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night's not too much to ask for. And don't become a hobo at a one particular church, because it ruins it for the next missionary. And spending time with your family is the most important thing that you can do. And I'm not talking about going to Disney World or those types of things, but honestly, spending time with your family on Deputation is how you're going to make it.
If you're there and your children damage some church property, own up to that fast and ask the church what I can do to take care of that, because they're going to find it anyway, and they're going to pin it on you. And if that is what happens and you don't bring it to their attention, they'll never support you.
Yes.
And so it's really important just to be accountable with everything that you do while you're out there. Hey, thank you for listening to us today. I know we rambled, I guess, but we gave you some things, I think, to consider and to think about. And may God bless you, and Merry Christmas to you. And you keep pressing on the upward way. We'll see you next week.